Feel like Bitcoin's big hurdle to jump there is to be accepted into the economical system of checking out for goods or services. That's the big hurdle, I think, because once you get to that point, then people might, just like the debit card and the credit card, might start subjugating that usage, if that makes sense.
No, of course. That's actually what I tend to focus my time and energy now that I work fully in the Bitcoin industry. Is Bitcoin is right now in its current form a store of value, right? Like it acts a lot like a gold. I buy some Bitcoin
Right. We can't
today,
take
most
gold to the
likely,
store and check out with it, basically.
right? Like Bitcoin, I buy some today. Pretty good chance 10 years from now, it's going to be worth more than what I paid for it 10 years ago, right? But Bitcoin is much more than that. I believe it is perfect money. It does have some scalability challenges that we need to overcome. So the way Bitcoin was designed was for it to be very simple, meaning it can be ran, the network can be ran on a very simple computer. I'm talking even more simple than your everyday laptop. It's designed in nature to be very simple, so that way there's no economic hurdles to, join the network. Somebody in Iowa can join the network, the US government can join the network, or a kid in Africa can join the network. It's purposely designed to be simple and basic. However, that there's challenges when you're trying to scale the network. So let's say like everybody was like, you know what, Mike, we agree with you. Bitcoin's not a scam. It's actually money. Let's just say the world just all of a sudden decides I want to take Bitcoin as payment tomorrow. We can't take every transaction and stuff it into a block on Bitcoin's blockchain and expect the network to operate the way it should. It will, but a lot of transactions won't be able to fit in that block. So it has some scalability challenges that need to be overcome before it is a medium of exchange, meaning like you can go take your Bitcoin down to the grocery store and pay with Bitcoin. That is what I've dedicated my lane in Bitcoin and the industry focusing on. And that's why I like working for the conference, because, our conference draws about 30,000 people that are Bitcoiners. They understand what Bitcoin is. And we require all of our merchants and vendors during the event to accept Bitcoin as payment. So
Is that an
yes, like
industry in the
obviously,
processing of these payments? I feel like that's an industry in itself.
well, so that you bring up another good point. It's always interesting when you start talking about digital payments, right? Like if I were to go buy an apple down at the grocery store right now, a lot of things are required for me to do that, right? Like in a digital form. Let's say I don't have cash anymore. Like if I went down to the grocery store with cash and I go buy an apple and the apple's $1, I hand the clerk $1, they look at the dollar. We both agree that that's $1 and the funds are settled right there. Like, there's no question of like, does he actually have the money? Is it counterfeit? Like we can all agree that that's $1. I buy it and we move on. And that dollar can be spent right away. Now, if I were to go take my debit card down there, what is actually required in that process to buy that apple,
A
right?
data processing
And it's a
company.
lot. There's a lot. And it's something we don't think about as a society because it is kind of new. Like, digital payments haven't been around that long. I mean, they've been around I'm 32, so they haven't been around my whole life. But anyways, like for that process to work at a digital level, it requires me to have a bank, a card issuer. It requires the Visa network, and it requires the merchant, the grocery store, to also have a bank. And when I swipe that credit card for $1, not only am I now like leaving a digital footprint showing that Michael Markle bought a apple for $1 at this time, at this location, at this grocery store, which is like a privacy nightmare. It required my bank and the merchant's bank to communicate. It requires the Visa payment network, most likely, or the MasterCard or Discover Card payment network to communicate between the two banks to, facilitate that transaction. Like it's a very cumbersome process. And I believe that we should be able to transact freely as humans. And Bitcoin is actually essentially digital cash. So like if I were to, if we do get to a point, and I do believe we will get there, I don't know what that time frame looks like to where merchants are accepting Bitcoin as payment. It's really bringing back the ethos of a cash like payment. Like when I bought that Apple with cash, you didn't know my name. You didn't know who I am. There was no question of like, there's no permission. Like you don't have to like call my bank up to be like, okay, can Mike afford this dollar? Are we going to approve this transaction or not? I simply hand you the dollar and the clerk looks at it and is like, yep, we both agree it's a dollar. It's settled. We can move on. And even the merchant can go spend that dollar right away. Now, again, a Visa card transaction, there's a settlement period. Typically, the merchant just can't take that dollar and go spend it right away. There has to be like a day of clearance.
And they lose a piece of that dollar in the process.
And they lose a piece of it. And most likely, you can't even do a payment with a credit card for $1. A lot of the merchants will be like, no, it's a $5 minimum. So yes, like I think that is if every merchant tomorrow all of a sudden started accepting Bitcoin, that would, yes, of course, people would be more inclined to have it and use it. But people also need to realize that Bitcoin is not a company. Bitcoin is not a government.
It's not Visa.
It's not Visa. This is not a top-down, authoritarian movement. This is a grassroots movement. And Bitcoin adoption is going to continue to go up with the government continuing to mishandle funds, and the fiat currency system continues to collapse as we are already seeing.